I sat in the plastic chair of the oncology waiting room, my phone buzzing with a text from Mom that made my blood run cold. "Sarah, we had to make some tough business decisions. Call me when you get this." 20 minutes later, Dr. Williams delivered 2 pieces of news that would change everything. First, my lymphoma was responding well to treatment, and we needed to continue the aggressive chemotherapy protocol for another 4 months. Second, my insurance claim had been denied because my policy had been terminated 3 days ago. I stared at her, certain I'd misheard. "Terminated? That's impossible. I'm covered under our family business plan." Dr. Williams pulled up my file on her computer, her expression growing concerned. "According to your insurance company, you're no longer listed as an employee of Chen Family Auto Repair. Without active employment status, your coverage ended immediately." The room started spinning. I'd worked at my family's shop since I was 16, managing their books, handling customer service, basically running the office while Dad and Kevin focused on the mechanical work. I wasn't just an employee, I was family. But before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The call to Mom went straight to voicemail. Same with Dad. Kevin finally picked up on the 4th ring, and I could hear Ashley laughing in the background, probably planning their upcoming engagement party at the Broadmoor. "Hey Sarah, what's up?" His casual tone made my chest tighten. I explained what happened at the hospital, the insurance termination, the $47,000 bill I'd just been handed for my last 2 treatments. The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. "Kevin? Are you there?" When he finally spoke, his voice had that careful quality he used when he was about to deliver bad news. "Look, things have been really tight at the shop. Ashley's restaurant expansion is happening faster than we expected, and with my MBA graduation coming up, Dad thought maybe it was time to streamline the employee roster." Streamline the employee roster. That's what they were calling it. "I have cancer, Kevin. I'm literally in the middle of chemotherapy." The words came out sharper than I intended, but I was too shocked to soften them. Ashley said something in the background, and Kevin covered the phone for a moment. When he came back, his tone was defensive. "It's not like you're the only one with problems, Sarah. This restaurant deal could set Ashley up for life, and my graduation is a huge milestone for our family. Dad's already committed to helping with both events." I thought about the numbers I'd been running for the shop's books. Yes, business had been slower, but we weren't broke. Dad had just bought a new truck, and Mom had been talking about renovating their kitchen. The shop made enough to cover basic health insurance, especially for a family member who'd never missed a day of work, even during treatment. "How much are you spending on Kevin's graduation party?" I asked, though I already knew the answer from the receipts I'd been filing. "That's not really relevant," Kevin said, but his voice wavered. The graduation celebration at the Broadmoor was costing them $25,000. Ashley's restaurant expansion loan required a $40,000 family contribution that Dad had eagerly volunteered. Combined, they were spending more on celebrations and business ventures than my entire year of treatment would cost. But somehow my health insurance was the expense they couldn't afford. "I need you to call Dad and fix this," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I have another treatment scheduled for Friday. Without insurance, they want payment up front." Kevin sighed like I was asking him to solve world hunger. "Sarah, you're being dramatic. Lots of people deal with medical bills. You can set up a payment plan or apply for charity care. The hospital won't just let you die, won't just let me die." My own brother talking about my survival like it was a minor inconvenience they'd have to work around. "Kevin, this is lymphoma. If I miss treatments or delay them because of insurance issues, it could literally kill me." Ashley's voice got louder in the background, something about needing to call the caterer, and Kevin's attention was already drifting. "Look, I have to go. We'll figure something out, okay?" The line went dead, leaving me sitting in my car outside the hospital with a stack of medical bills, and the growing realization that my family had just decided my life was worth less than their social events. I drove home to my small apartment in Capitol Hill, the same place I'd moved to when I started treatment so I'd be closer to the hospital. The family house in Lakewood suddenly felt very far away. That evening, Mom finally called back. Her voice had that overly cheerful quality she used when she was about to justify something terrible. Sweetie, I heard you talk to Kevin. We wanted to discuss this as a family before telling you, but things have been so hectic with the graduation planning and Ashley's big restaurant opportunity. She launched into a detailed explanation of their financial priorities, how Kevin's MBA represented the family's future, how Ashley's success would benefit everyone in the long run. What about my future, Mom? I interrupted. What about me surviving this cancer? There was a pause, and I could hear Dad coaching her in the background. When she spoke again, her tone had shifted to that patient voice she used when she thought I was being unreasonable. Honey, you're strong. You've already made it through the worst part of treatment. Surely you can work something out with the hospital for the last few months. This graduation only happens once, and Ashley's opportunity won't wait. I hung up and sat in my kitchen, staring at the medical bills spread across my table. My family had made their choice, and it wasn't me. The next morning brought a call from Presbyterian Hospital's billing department that shattered any remaining illusions I had about my family's decision being temporary or reversible. Ms. Chen, we need to discuss your account. Your insurance company has officially confirmed the termination of your policy, and we're showing a balance of $94,000 for treatments received over the past 6 weeks. Jennifer, the billing coordinator, spoke with practiced sympathy, but the numbers were cold and unforgiving. I pulled up my laptop and logged into the family business account, something I'd done every morning for the past 8 years. My access had been revoked. The woman who had managed their payroll, balanced their books, and knew every financial detail of Chen Family Auto Repair was suddenly locked out of the system she'd built. The message was clear. I wasn't just losing my insurance, I was losing my job, my income, and my connection to the family business that had been my entire adult life. There has to be some mistake, I told Jennifer, though my voice lacked conviction. I've been employed there since I was 18. My family owns the business. Jennifer's tone remained professional but gentle. I understand this is confusing, Ms. Chen. Unfortunately, employment verification shows you were terminated on February 15th. The termination was filed by Robert Chen, listed as the business owner. February 15th. The day after Kevin had called to tell me about his acceptance to the executive training program at Ashley's family's restaurant chain. The day after Ashley had announced her expansion plans required immediate family investment. The timing wasn't coincidental, it was calculated. They'd waited until they knew exactly how much money they needed for their own priorities before cutting me loose. I spent the rest of that day making phone calls that led nowhere. The insurance company confirmed the termination was legitimate and properly filed. The state employment office explained that family businesses had broad discretion in hiring and firing decisions. Even the Small Business Association representative I spoke with seemed uncomfortable but offered no real recourse. Unfortunately, when it's a family business and you're a family member, the usual employment protections don't always apply. They can restructure their employee roster however they see fit. By evening, I was exhausted and desperate enough to drive to the family house in Lakewood. Dad's new truck sat in the driveway next to Mom's recently detailed SUV. Both vehicles worth more than my entire year of cancer treatment. The house looked the same as always. Warm light glowing from the windows. The kind of scene that should represent safety and homecoming. Instead, it felt like approaching enemy territory. Mom opened the door wearing her new outfit from Ashley's shopping trip. The one she'd shown me photos of just 2 weeks ago when she was excited about being the stylish mother of the groom at Kevin's graduation. Sarah, sweetie, what are you doing here? You look terrible. Her concern seemed genuine until Dad appeared behind her, his expression immediately guarded. We need to talk about the insurance situation, I said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. The living room was filled with graduation party planning materials, sample menus from the Broadmoor, decoration catalogs, and a thick folder labeled Kevin's Big Day. Ashley sat on the couch surrounded by restaurant business plans and loan documents, looking up at me with barely concealed irritation. Sarah, you can't just show up here demanding things, Ashley said, gathering her papers like I might steal their business secrets. Kevin and I have been working on these plans for months. This expansion is happening whether you approve or not. Her possessive tone when talking about Kevin and the family money made my stomach turn. She'd been dating my brother for less than 2 years, But somehow she had more say in family financial decisions than I did. Dad settled into his recliner with a heavy sigh. Sarah, we've made our decision. The business can't support unnecessary employees right now, and frankly, you haven't been pulling your weight since this whole cancer thing started. The casual cruelty of calling my life-threatening illness, this whole cancer thing, hit me like a physical blow. I've been doing the books from my hospital bed, Dad. I worked through every single treatment. Working from home isn't the same as being present, Mom chimed in, her voice taking on that lecturing tone she'd perfected during my childhood. Kevin has been picking up your slack, handling customers, learning the business side while you've been focused on your health issues. My health issues? As if I'd chosen to get lymphoma as some kind of hobby that was inconveniencing their lives. Kevin finally looked up from his phone, where he'd been texting throughout this entire conversation. Look, Sarah, this isn't personal. It's business. Ashley's restaurant deal is time-sensitive, and my graduation represents a major investment in our family's future. You'll figure out the medical stuff. You always do. The dismissive way he said it, like my cancer treatment was equivalent to figuring out a difficult math problem, revealed how completely disconnected he was from the reality of my situation. Kevin, without insurance, I can't continue treatment. Dr. Williams made that very clear. The hospital requires payment up front for uninsured patients, and I don't have $50,000 sitting around. I pulled out the billing statements, spreading them across their coffee table next to Ashley's restaurant business plan. This is what each treatment costs. This is what happens if I miss more than one session. Ashley picked up one of the medical bills, studying it with the same expression she'd use for a restaurant supply invoice. Maybe you should look into state programs or charity care. I'm sure there are resources for people in your situation. People in my situation. Not family members facing a crisis. Just people who hadn't planned adequately for life-threatening illness. The charity care application requires proof that family members can't provide assistance, I said, watching their faces carefully. It specifically asks about family business ownership and family assets. They'll want to know why a profitable auto repair shop can't help cover medical expenses for a family member. Dad's jaw tightened, and I could see him calculating the implications. Their comfortable lifestyle and business success would make it nearly impossible for me to qualify for charity care. That's not our problem, Dad said finally. You're an adult. You should have your own insurance, your own savings. We can't be expected to sacrifice our family's future for your medical bills. The irony of him talking about family sacrifice while literally sacrificing his daughter's life wasn't lost on me, but pointing it out would be useless. They'd already decided I was expendable. I gathered up my medical bills and stood to leave, but Ashley's voice stopped me at the door. Sarah, I hope you understand this isn't about not caring. It's about making smart financial decisions that benefit everyone long term. Kevin's career and my restaurant will create opportunities for the whole family eventually. Eventually. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. After I was dead from untreated cancer, presumably. I understand perfectly, I said quietly. You've made it very clear where I stand in this family's priorities. As I walked to my car, I could hear them already returning to their party planning, their voices animated with excitement about centerpieces and catering options. The sound of their laughter followed me into the cold Denver night, a sharp contrast to the silence that awaited me in my empty apartment. The financial reality of my situation hit me with brutal clarity when I sat down with Jennifer from the hospital billing department 3 days later. She'd arranged for us to meet in person, bringing along a social worker named Marcus and a patient advocate named Diana. The conference room felt sterile and impersonal, but their faces showed genuine concern as they spread out paperwork that would determine whether I lived or died. Your case is complicated because of the family business situation, Diana explained, her voice gentle but direct. Normally, when someone loses employer-sponsored insurance, we can fast-track them through emergency Medicaid or other state programs. But because your family owns a business that generates substantial revenue, you don't qualify for most assistance programs. She showed me the income thresholds and asset limits that would disqualify me from help. Chen Family Auto Repair's annual revenue put my family well above the poverty line, even though I personally had been living paycheck to paycheck. Marcus, The social worker leaned forward with a folder full of applications. We can try appeals and hardship applications, but honestly, Sarah, the system assumes that family members will help each other in situations like this. When a profitable family business deliberately terminates a family member's insurance during cancer treatment, it creates a legal and ethical gray area that most programs aren't designed to handle. The word deliberately hung in the air between us. That's exactly what this was, a deliberate choice to prioritize wedding celebrations and business investments over my survival. Jennifer pulled out a calculator and started running numbers that made my chest tighten with panic. Your next treatment is scheduled for Monday. Without insurance, the hospital requires a $15,000 deposit before we can proceed. The full treatment cycle you need will cost approximately $180,000 over the next 4 months. She paused, letting the number sink in. We can offer a payment plan, but it would require a significant down payment and proof of income to support monthly payments of at least $3,000. $3,000 a month. My entire salary from the auto shop had been $2,400 monthly, and now I didn't even have that income. What happens if I can't make the payments? I asked, though I already knew the answer from Dr. Williams's warnings. Marcus and Diana exchanged glances before Diana spoke carefully. The hospital is required to provide emergency care, but ongoing cancer treatment isn't considered emergency care. If you can't pay, treatment stops. And if treatment stops? The question came out as barely a whisper. Jennifer's professional composure cracked slightly. Dr. Williams estimates you have maybe 6 to 8 weeks without continued chemotherapy before the lymphoma becomes terminal. I'm sorry, Sarah. I wish I had better options to offer you. 6 to 8 weeks. Less than 2 months to live unless I could somehow conjure $180,000 from thin air. I left the hospital and drove aimlessly through Denver, my mind spinning with impossible calculations. My savings account held $3,400, enough for maybe one treatment if I begged for a discount. My credit cards were nearly maxed from previous medical expenses. I'd already sold my decent furniture and electronics to cover earlier copays and prescriptions. The only valuable thing I owned was my car, and I needed that to get to treatments, assuming I could afford any more treatments. That evening, I called my college roommate Jessica, who now worked as a financial advisor in Seattle. I'd been too proud to reach out before, but desperation had a way of crushing pride. Sarah, oh my God, I had no idea about the cancer, she said after I explained my situation. But wait, your family owns a business and they canceled your insurance? That can't be legal. I walked her through the employment termination, the timing with Kevin's graduation and Ashley's restaurant investment, the cold calculation behind their decision. Jesus Christ, Sarah, that's not just cruel, it's financially insane. They're spending more on parties and investments than your entire treatment would cost? Jessica's outrage felt validating, but it didn't solve my immediate problem. Look, I can help you explore some options. There are medical credit companies, crowdfunding platforms, maybe even legal recourse for wrongful termination, but none of that will happen fast enough for Monday's treatment. The weekend became a blur of desperate phone calls and online research. I applied for every medical assistance program in Colorado, even ones I knew I wouldn't qualify for. I called distant relatives I hadn't spoken to in years, explaining my situation and asking for loans I knew they couldn't afford. My aunt in California cried on the phone and sent me $500, all she could manage on her teacher's salary. My cousin in Texas promised to start a fundraising campaign at his church. Sunday evening, I swallowed what remained of my pride and called Dad directly. Mom answered, her voice immediately tense when she recognized my number. Sarah, we've already discussed this situation. We can't keep going in circles. I could hear the graduation party preparation in the background. Caterers setting up, Ashley directing traffic, Kevin laughing with friends who'd arrived early for the celebration. Mom, I need $15,000 by tomorrow morning, or I can't continue treatment. After that, Dr. Williams says I have less than 2 months to live. The words came out flat and factual, stripped of emotion, because I couldn't afford to break down. $15,000. That's less than half of what you're spending on Kevin's graduation party this weekend. The silence stretched until Dad took the phone. Sarah, we've already made our financial commitments. The caterers have been paid, the venue is booked, Ashley's restaurant loan requires our contribution this week. We can't just cancel everything because you failed to plan for your medical expenses. Failed to plan. As if anyone could plan for their family deliberately sabotaging their cancer treatment. Dad, I'm going to die. Do you understand that? In 2 months, I'll be dead because you chose Kevin's party over my life. My voice cracked despite my efforts to stay composed. Dad's response was immediate and cold. Don't be so dramatic, Sarah. People survive cancer without expensive treatments all the time. You're young and strong. Fight harder instead of expecting everyone else to solve your problems. I hung up and sat in my apartment, surrounded by medical bills and fundraising research, listening to the sounds of celebration drifting up from the street below. Somewhere across town, my family was hosting the party that cost more than my life was worth to them. The cognitive dissonance was staggering. They were celebrating Kevin's achievement while simultaneously ensuring their daughter would die before she could celebrate anything ever again. That night, I wrote letters I hoped I'd never have to send. One to Dr. Williams, explaining why I couldn't continue treatment. One to my landlord, giving notice on my apartment. One to Jessica, asking her to handle my affairs after I was gone. The process felt surreal, like planning my own funeral while still very much alive. But the numbers didn't lie, and neither did my family's unwavering commitment to their own priorities over my survival. Monday morning arrived gray and cold, matching my mood as I prepared to call the hospital and cancel my treatment. My phone rang just as I was gathering courage for that conversation. It was Jennifer from billing, and her voice carried an urgency that immediately caught my attention. Sarah, don't make any decisions yet. Something's happened that might change everything. Jennifer's voice carried an excitement that seemed impossible given my circumstances. Sarah, I need you to come in immediately. There's been a development with your case that could change everything, but I can't discuss it over the phone. The urgency in her tone made my heart race with a mixture of hope and terror. In my experience, hospital calls that couldn't be discussed over the phone usually meant bad news, not miracles. I arrived at Presbyterian Hospital within 30 minutes, my hands shaking as I walked through the familiar corridors that had become my second home over the past few months. Jennifer met me in the same conference room where we'd discussed my impossible financial situation just days earlier, but this time she wasn't alone. A woman in an expensive suit sat across from her, along with a man I didn't recognize wearing a hospital administrator badge. Sarah, this is Rebecca Martinez from Channel 7 News, and this is David Thompson, our hospital's chief ethics officer, Jennifer said, gesturing to each person in turn. Rebecca contacted us after receiving a tip about your situation. Apparently, someone reached out to the news station about a local family business owner who terminated their daughter's insurance during cancer treatment to pay for family celebrations. Rebecca leaned forward, her expression mixing professional interest with genuine concern. Sarah, I've been investigating healthcare discrimination cases for the past 5 years, and your situation is one of the most egregious examples I've encountered. A family deliberately sabotaging their own daughter's cancer treatment to fund luxury events crosses every ethical line imaginable. She opened a tablet and showed me screenshots of social media posts from Kevin's graduation party, images of elaborate decorations and expensive catering, while I'd been sitting in my apartment writing goodbye letters. Someone sent us these photos, along with financial documents showing your family's business revenue and their spending on recent events, Rebecca continued. They also provided medical records proving your treatment timeline and insurance termination. This person clearly has inside knowledge of both your medical situation and your family's financial decisions. The photos showed Kevin and Ashley posing with champagne glasses that probably cost more than my monthly medication, their faces glowing with happiness while I'd been calculating how many weeks I had left to live. David Thompson, the ethics officer, spoke with the measured tone of someone who'd dealt with difficult cases before. Sarah, what your family has done raises serious legal and ethical questions. While family businesses have broad discretion in employment decisions, terminating insurance specifically to prevent medical treatment could constitute criminal negligence or even attempted murder by omission. The words hit me like a physical blow. Criminal negligence. Attempted murder. Terms I'd never imagined applying to my own parents. The hospital's legal team has been reviewing your case since Friday, David continued, pulling out a thick folder. We've identified several potential avenues for immediate intervention, First, we can pursue emergency court orders requiring your family to restore your insurance coverage. Second, we can file complaints with state regulatory agencies about discriminatory business practices. Third, we can initiate a formal investigation into whether their actions constitute elder abuse or medical abandonment. Rebecca's tablet chimed with an incoming message, and her expression shifted to something resembling excitement. Sarah, I just received confirmation from our legal team. Channel 7 wants to run an investigative series on medical discrimination within families. Your story would be the centerpiece, but we'd also explore other cases where family members have been denied medical care for financial reasons. She paused, studying my face carefully. The exposure could put significant pressure on your family to reverse their decision, but it would also make your situation very public. The thought of my private family nightmare becoming public television made my stomach clench, but Jennifer was already explaining why media attention might be my only hope. Sarah, your family is clearly gambling that you'll find some other way to pay for treatment, or that you'll simply accept their decision and die quietly. Public scrutiny changes that calculation completely. When their friends, customers, and community know what they've done, maintaining their current position becomes much more difficult. David pulled out another document that made my pulse quicken. There's something else, Sarah. Our investigation revealed that your family recently applied for a business expansion loan that specifically listed you as a key employee and revenue generator. They used your work history and financial management skills as justification for the loan approval, while simultaneously filing termination paperwork with the insurance company. The contradiction was staggering. They'd promoted my value to get money from the bank while claiming I was expendable to the insurance company. That's loan fraud, Rebecca said, her journalistic instincts clearly engaged. They can't simultaneously claim you're essential to the business for loan purposes while terminating you for insurance purposes. That gives us concrete evidence of deliberate deception rather than legitimate financial hardship. She showed me copies of the loan application David had obtained, documents where Dad had described me as integral to daily operations and irreplaceable for customer relations and financial management. Jennifer spread out a new set of papers that looked different from the previous billing statements I'd seen. Based on these developments, the hospital has decided to extend your treatment timeline while we pursue legal remedies. We're not going to let you die while bureaucratic processes play out. The relief that flooded through me was so intense, I nearly started crying right there in the conference room. However, David added with appropriate caution, this isn't a permanent solution. The hospital can cover immediate treatment costs as part of our charity care obligations, but we need resolution within 60 days, or we'll face our own financial constraints. 60 days. It felt like a lifetime compared to the weeks I'd been counting down, but it was still a deadline hanging over my head. Rebecca was already planning the investigation timeline. I want to interview you this week, Sarah. We'll also approach your family for comment, though I suspect they'll decline to participate. More importantly, we'll investigate other families in similar situations and examine whether this kind of medical discrimination is more widespread than people realize. The idea that other families might be doing this to their own members was both horrifying and oddly comforting. At least I wasn't alone in experiencing this particular kind of betrayal. There's one more thing, Jennifer said, her voice taking on a conspiratorial tone. The person who contacted Channel 7 about your situation, they're still providing information. Rebecca received detailed financial records this morning, showing exactly how much your family has spent on celebrations and investments in the past 6 months compared to what your full treatment would cost. She showed me a spreadsheet that laid out the numbers in stark, undeniable terms. Kevin's graduation celebration, $28,000. Ashley's restaurant investment, $45,000. Dad's new truck, $52,000. Mom's kitchen renovation, $18,000. Total family spending on non-essential items in the past 6 months, $143,000. My complete cancer treatment cost, $180,000. They could have covered most of my medical expenses with money they'd already chosen to spend on luxuries and celebrations. Someone in your family or close to your family wants this story told, Rebecca observed. They're providing documentation that could only come from someone with intimate knowledge of both your medical situation and their financial decisions. Someone who's apparently disgusted enough by what's happening to risk family relationships to save your life. The thought that someone was secretly fighting for me while publicly maintaining family loyalty was both comforting and unsettling. David started gathering his paperwork, but his expression remained serious. Sarah, I need you to understand that pursuing this path will permanently alter your relationship with your family. Once we file legal complaints and the media investigation airs, there's no going back to pretending this didn't happen. The weight of that reality settled over me like a heavy blanket. They've already made their choice about our relationship, I said quietly. They chose Kevin's party and Ashley's restaurant over my life. I'm just refusing to die quietly to preserve their comfort. Rebecca nodded approvingly, already envisioning the story that would expose my family's calculated cruelty to the entire Denver community. As we scheduled follow-up meetings and interviews, I felt something I hadn't experienced in weeks: hope. Not just for survival, but for justice. My family had gambled that I'd accept their decision and fade away without causing problems. They were about to discover how wrong they'd been about their supposedly weak and dramatic daughter. The Channel 7 investigation aired on a Tuesday evening, just 4 days after my family's secret informant had provided the final piece of evidence that would destroy any remaining credibility they might claim. Rebecca had structured the story masterfully, opening with footage of Kevin's lavish graduation party at the Broadmoor, while my voice narrated the timeline of my insurance cancellation. The contrast was devastating. Champagne toasts and elaborate floral arrangements juxtaposed with hospital bills and treatment schedules. What made the story truly explosive wasn't just the basic facts of my situation, but the detailed financial analysis Rebecca's team had compiled. They'd obtained records showing that Chen Family Auto Repair had generated over $400,000 in profit during the previous year, while my salary had been just $28,800. The business could have easily absorbed my medical costs without affecting their lifestyle, yet they'd chosen to prioritize Ashley's restaurant investment and Kevin's celebration instead. The numbers told a story of deliberate cruelty that no amount of family loyalty could justify. The community response was immediate and overwhelming. By Wednesday morning, the auto shop's phone was ringing constantly with cancellation calls. Customers who'd been bringing their cars to Chen Family Auto Repair for decades were demanding explanations, and Dad's attempts to defend their decision only made things worse. It's a private family matter, he kept repeating to reporters who'd stationed themselves outside the shop, but the privacy excuse fell flat when the family had made their celebrations so public while hiding my medical crisis. Ashley's restaurant dreams crumbled even faster than the auto shop's reputation. Her potential investors pulled out within hours of the story airing, unwilling to associate their brands with someone who'd participated in denying cancer treatment to a family member. The restaurant space she'd already signed a lease for sat empty, while she tried desperately to salvage deals that were already beyond repair. Kevin's new job offer was rescinded just as quickly, with his prospective employer citing concerns about his judgment and character. But the real turning point came when Rebecca aired the second part of her investigation on Thursday night. The secret informant had provided recorded phone conversations between family members, conversations that revealed the cold calculation behind their decision. Mom's voice was clearly audible, discussing how they could, quote, wait out Sarah's treatments and see if she'd find another way to pay for things. Dad could be heard saying that cancer patients always find some program or charity, and that they shouldn't sacrifice the family's future for Sarah's medical drama. Most damning was a conversation between Kevin and Ashley where they discussed the timeline of my expected death and whether they'd need to adjust their wedding plans around my funeral. If she's only got a few months, we might want to move the wedding earlier, Ashley's voice suggested with chilling practicality. I don't want our celebration overshadowed by family tragedy. They weren't just abandoning me. They were actively planning around my death like it was a scheduling inconvenience. The recorded conversations prompted a criminal investigation that moved with surprising speed. Detective Martinez from the Denver Police Department contacted me Friday morning to explain that the district attorney was considering charges of criminal negligence and conspiracy to commit harm through medical abandonment. "These recordings show premeditation," she explained during our interview. "Your family didn't just make a poor financial decision. They deliberately planned to let you die while spending money on luxuries. That crosses the line from civil matter to criminal behavior." Dr. Williams called that same afternoon with news that seemed almost anticlimactic given everything else happening. "Sarah, your latest test results show remarkable improvement. The treatments have been more effective than we initially hoped, and your prognosis has shifted significantly. The lymphoma was retreating faster than expected, meaning I'd need fewer treatments than originally planned." The irony was crushing. My family had gambled my life for their celebrations, and I was going to survive anyway, leaving them with nothing but criminal charges and destroyed reputations. The legal proceedings moved through the system with unprecedented speed, aided by the clear documentation of financial fraud and medical abandonment. Dad was arrested at the auto shop on Monday morning, charged with insurance fraud for the loan application discrepancies and conspiracy to commit medical neglect. Mom was charged as an accessory, while Kevin and Ashley faced civil liability for their recorded statements planning around my expected death. The family business collapsed completely within 2 weeks of the criminal charges being filed. Without customers and facing legal bills that drained their accounts, Dad was forced to sell the shop at a significant loss just to cover initial legal fees. The house in Lakewood went on the market shortly after, though finding buyers proved difficult once the address became associated with the news coverage. Kevin moved back in with Ashley's parents, his MBA worthless without job prospects, in a city where everyone knew his story. But the most satisfying moment came during the plea hearing, when the identity of my secret informant was finally revealed. Ashley's younger sister Carmen took the witness stand and explained how she'd been horrified by the conversations she'd overheard during family gatherings. "I kept thinking about my own sister and how I'd feel if my family chose money over her life," she testified. Sarah didn't deserve to die so Ashley could have her dream restaurant. Carmen had been the one feeding information to Channel 7, copying financial documents and recording conversations, because she couldn't stand watching a family plan someone's death for their own convenience. Her testimony sealed the prosecution's case and revealed the depth of calculation behind my family's betrayal. Even Ashley's own sister had been disgusted enough to risk family relationships to save my life. The final sentencing brought a closure I hadn't expected to feel. Dad received 18 months in prison for fraud and medical neglect, while Mom got probation and community service. Kevin and Ashley were ordered to pay restitution that would take them years to afford, effectively ensuring their financial struggles would mirror what they'd tried to force on me. The judge's final comments captured the community's sentiment perfectly. "This case represents one of the most callous examples of family betrayal this court has ever seen." I testified at that sentencing hearing, my voice steady as I addressed the family that had tried to kill me through abandonment. "You chose celebrations over my survival, and now you'll live with the consequences of that choice. I'm alive, I'm healthy, and I'm building a life that doesn't include people who would rather see me dead than adjust their spending priorities." Their faces showed no remorse, only anger at being caught and punished. Today I work as a patient advocate at Presbyterian Hospital, helping other families navigate medical crises without destroying each other in the process. Carmen and I stay in touch. She's the only family member I speak to now. The rest of them served their sentences and moved away from Denver, unable to rebuild their lives in a community that knew exactly what they'd done. My cancer remains in remission, treated successfully despite their efforts to prevent my survival. Sometimes people ask if I miss my family or regret the legal consequences they faced. The answer is simple. They made their choice when they prioritized parties over my life, and I made mine when I refused to die quietly to protect their reputation. Some betrayals are too fundamental to forgive, and some choices reveal character too clearly to ignore. They taught me that family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up when your life is on the line. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.